The mining station on Kepler 442b had been abandoned for 3 standard cycles. Its rusted corridors echoed with a whisper of recycled air, and emergency lighting cast long shadows across debris-strewn floors. Most salvage crews avoided the place. The official reports called it a total loss after the Zephyrian attack, but Marcus Chun had never been one to trust official reports. Marcus adjusted his portable scanner as he stepped through the breach in the station's outer hull. His modified cargo ship, the Wanderer, sat in the nearby asteroid field, waiting for his return. As an independent salvager, he made his living picking through the bones of dead ships and forgotten outposts. The work was dangerous, lonely, and often unprofitable, but it beat working for the corporate mining guilds. The station's main corridor stretched ahead, littered with torn metal and broken glass. Marcus's boots crunched softly on the debris as he moved deeper into the structure. His scanner beeped steadily, detecting traces of valuable materials deeper in the complex. Most salvagers would have grabbed what they could from the outer sections and left, but Marcus had learned that the real treasures were often hidden in the places others feared to go. As he rounded a corner near what had once been the station's medical bay, his scanner registered something unusual. Not metal or rare minerals, but organic matter. Living organic matter. Marcus frowned and checked the reading again. The device wasn't malfunctioning. Something alive was in this dead station. He followed the signal through a maze of collapsed support beams and emergency blast doors. The readings grew stronger as he approached a section of the station that had suffered severe damage during the attack. Here, the walls were scorched black, and holes had been blasted through multiple levels. Emergency foam had sealed the worst breaches, but the area still felt unstable. The organic reading led him to a small storage compartment that had somehow remained intact despite the destruction around it. Marcus checked his sidearm and carefully opened the door. Inside, huddled in the corner behind crates of medical supplies, was a figure that made him stop breathing. She was clearly not human. Her skin had a pale blue tint that seemed to shift and shimmer in the emergency lighting. Delicate scales covered her arms and the visible parts of her torso. Her hair was long and silver, almost metallic in appearance. But it was her injuries that made Marcus forget about species differences. Deep gashes covered her left side, and one of her legs was bent at an unnatural angle. Dark blue blood had pooled beneath her. She was unconscious, breathing in short, labored gasps. Her clothes, which appeared to be some kind of uniform, were torn and stained with blood. Marcus could see insignia on her collar that he didn't recognize, but they had the look of military rank markers. For a moment, Marcus hesitated. Getting involved with alien survivors was dangerous. There could be legal complications, medical issues he couldn't handle, or worse. The smart thing would be to report the finding to the authorities and leave. But as he looked at her broken form, he couldn't bring himself to walk away. Marcus knelt beside her and checked her pulse. It was weak, but steady, though her breathing concerned him. He activated his emergency medical scanner, a basic device that could analyze most known species' vital signs. The readings were troubling. She was in severe shock and losing blood internally. He opened his basic medical kit and began treating what wounds he could. The scanner indicated that her species had similar enough physiology to humans that standard emergency procedures should work. He injected her with a broad-spectrum painkiller and began applying pressure bandages to the worst of her external injuries. As he worked, she stirred slightly. Her eyes opened, revealing irises that swirled with colors Marcus had never seen before, like oil on water. She looked at him with confusion and fear, trying to speak in a language he didn't understand. Her voice was musical, almost like singing, but weak. "Easy," Marcus said softly, holding up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm human. Do you understand any standard galactic?" She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slightly. When she spoke again, it was in heavily accented but understandable standard galactic. "You should not be here. Dangerous. Yeah, well, I specialize in dangerous, Marcus replied, continuing to treat her wounds. What happened here? Who did this to you? Her eyes filled with something that might have been tears, though they were silver instead of clear. My people, they left me. Said I was burdened. Too injured to move quickly. Marcus felt anger flare in his chest. He'd seen a lot of cruelty in his years as a salvager, but abandoning wounded comrades was something that always disgusted him. What's your name? Lyra, she whispered. Was medical officer. Third class. Well, Lyra, I'm Marcus, and you're coming with me. He finished applying the bandages and checked his scanner again. Her vital signs had stabilized somewhat, but she needed real medical attention soon. Can you move at all? She tried to sit up and immediately gasped in pain, falling back against the crates. My leg, I think it is broken. Marcus examined the injury more carefully. It was definitely broken, probably in multiple places. Moving her was going to be extremely difficult and painful, but staying in the station wasn't an option. His scanner had detected other things moving in the lower levels, and he had no desire to find out what scavengers had made their home in the ruins. This is going to hurt, he warned her, then carefully lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he'd expected, and her skin felt cool and smooth against his hands. She tried to muffle her cry of pain, but he could feel her trembling. The journey back to his ship was nerve-wracking. Every sound in the station made Marcus expect an attack, and Lyra drifted in and out of consciousness. Several times he had to stop and check her vital signs, terrified that she had slipped away. But each time she held on. When they finally reached the Wanderer, Marcus immediately took her to his small medical bay. The ship's medical system was more advanced than his portable kit, designed for the kinds of injuries common in salvage work. He laid her carefully on the medical table and began running full diagnostic scans. The results were both better and worse than he'd feared. The internal bleeding was minor and should heal on its own with proper treatment. Her broken leg could be set and would heal, though it would take time. But the scans also revealed that she was suffering from severe malnutrition and dehydration. She'd been trapped in that storage room for at least 2 weeks, surviving on emergency rations and recycled water. Marcus began treatment immediately, setting up 4 drips and stabilizing her leg with a medical brace. The ship's medical computer provided treatment protocols for her species, which it identified as Aquarian from the water worlds in the Centauri system. As he worked, he found himself wondering about her story. Why had her people abandoned her? What had they been doing on the mining station? Hours later, with Lyra stabilized and resting, Marcus sat in his small galley drinking coffee and staring out at the stars. He'd sent a coded message to Dr. Sarah Kim, a friend who ran a discreet medical clinic on the border station Harmony Point. Sarah owed him favors and asked few questions. She'd agreed to treat Lyra, no questions asked. But the journey to Harmony Point would take 4 days, and Marcus found himself wondering if he'd done the right thing. Taking on a refugee was complicated and dangerous. There were laws about harboring alien military personnel, especially those whose governments might consider them deserters. And there was no guarantee that Lyra would survive the journey. As if summoned by his thoughts, he heard movement from the medical bay. He found Lyra awake, staring at the ceiling with those strange, swirling eyes. She turned her head when she heard him enter. "Thank you," she said quietly. Her voice was stronger now, though still weak. "You did not have to help me." Marcus shrugged, feeling uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Couldn't just leave you there to die." "Many would have," she replied. "My own people did." "Why?" Marcus asked, pulling up a chair beside the medical table. "What happened on that station?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment, as if deciding whether to trust him with the truth. Finally, she spoke. "We were part of reconnaissance unit, investigating reports of illegal mining operations in this sector. The station was supposed to be abandoned, but when we arrived, we found Zephyrian raiders using it as a base." Marcus nodded. The Zephyrians were an aggressive species known for their brutal raids on outer rim settlements. They took what they wanted and left nothing but destruction behind. There were 12 of us, Lyra continued. We tried to investigate quietly, but they discovered us. In the fight, I was injured. When it came time to evacuate, my commanding officer said there was no room for wounded, that I would slow them down. So they just left you? Marcus felt his anger rising again. It was their way, Lyra said sadly. In Aquera military, the mission comes first. Individual lives are expendable. Marcus studied her face, seeing the pain there that had nothing to do with her physical injuries. Well, you're not expendable to me. And once we get you patched up properly, you can decide what you want to do with your life. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. You would let me choose? It's your life, Marcus said simply. No one else gets to decide what you do with it. For the first time since he'd found her, Lyra smiled. It was a small, tentative thing, but it transformed her entire face. I have never met a human before, she said. The stories we were told, they did not mention kindness. What kind of stories? Marcus asked, curious. That humans were violent, unpredictable, that they fought wars for no reason and cared only for profit and power. Marcus laughed, though there was no humor in it. Well, some of that's probably true, but most of us are just trying to get by, same as everyone else. They talked for another hour, with Lyra sharing more about her world and her people, while Marcus told her about his life as a salvager. He found himself enjoying the conversation more than he'd expected. It had been months since he'd had anyone to talk to besides ship computers and occasional clients. Eventually, Lyra's exhaustion caught up with her, and she drifted back to sleep. Marcus returned to the bridge and set course for Harmony Point. As the Wanderer jumped into hyperspace, he found himself looking forward to the next few days. For the first time in years, he wasn't traveling alone. But as he prepared for sleep in his own quarters, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that saving Lyra was going to change his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. He'd always prided himself on his independence, on not getting attached to people or places. Now he found himself responsible for another being's life, and the weight of that responsibility was both terrifying and oddly comforting. Outside his porthole, the stars streamed past in brilliant lines of light as the ship raced toward an uncertain future. In the medical bay, Lyra slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, her breathing steady and strong. And in his quarters, Marcus Chun lay awake, wondering what tomorrow would bring for both of them. Marcus woke to the sound of alarms blaring throughout the Wanderer. He rolled out his bunk and rushed to the bridge, checking the ship's status displays. They were being pursued by 3 vessels, their signatures matching Zephyrian Raider ships. Somehow they'd been found. Damn, Marcus muttered, his fingers flying over the controls as he analyzed their pursuers. The Raiders were fast, but lightly armed. The Wanderer could probably outrun them, but not with the damaged hyperdrive motivator that had been acting up for weeks. He'd been meaning to fix it at Harmony Point, but now that delay might cost them their lives. He rushed to the medical bay to check on Lyra. She was awake, her enhanced hearing having picked up the alarms even through the painkiller haze. Her eyes were wide with fear. Zephyrians? She asked, struggling to sit up despite her injuries. 3 ships, closing fast, Marcus confirmed, helping her into a more comfortable position. Do you know why they be following us? Lyra's expression darkened. During our reconnaissance mission, we discovered something. The mining operation wasn't just stealing resources. They were processing refined adamantium for illegal weapons manufacturing. If they think I survived and might report what we found. Marcus understood immediately. Adamantium-enhanced weapons were banned by the Galactic Council due to their devastating effects. A discovery like that would bring down the full force of multiple fleets on the Raiders' operation. They would do anything to prevent that information from reaching the authorities. Can we outrun them? Lyra asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Marcus shook his head. Not with our hyperdrive in its current state. We might be able to stay ahead of them for a while, but eventually they'll catch us. He paused, studying her face. There's another option, but you're not going to like it. Tell me. There's an asteroid field about 2 hours ahead called the Devil's Maze. It's a navigation nightmare, full of shifting rocks and electromagnetic anomalies. Most ships won't follow anything in there because it's suicide. Marcus met her eyes. But I've run it before. If we can make it through, we'll come out in the Harmony Point system. Lyra was quiet for a moment, processing this information. What are our chances? Marcus appreciated her directness. Honestly, maybe 40%. The maze has claimed a lot of good ships. And if we don't try, 0%, Marcus said simply. They'll eventually catch us, and Zephyrians don't take prisoners. Lyra nodded slowly. Then, we go through the maze. Marcus squeezed her hand briefly, surprised by how much her trust meant to him. Get some rest. It's going to be a rough ride. He returned to the bridge and began plotting a course for the Devil's Maze. The Wanderer's computers protested the navigation plan with multiple warnings, but Marcus overrode them all. He'd modified his ship extensively over the years, adding enhanced sensors and maneuvering thrusters specifically for navigating dangerous areas. If any ship could make it through the maze, it was his. The next 2 hours crawled by as they raced toward the asteroid field. The Zephyrian ships slowly gained ground, their more powerful engines eating up the distance between them. Marcus pushed the Wanderer as hard as he dared, but the gap continued to shrink. When the asteroid field finally appeared on the long-range sensors, it looked like a wall of static and debris stretching across space. The Devil's Maze earned its name from the chaotic gravitational fields created by the thousands of asteroids, many of which contained enough metal to interfere with navigation systems. Entering the field in 5 minutes, Marcus announced over the ship's intercom. Hold on to something. He could see the Zephyrian ships on his rear displays, close enough now that he could make out weapon signatures charging. They were preparing to fire as soon as they got within range, hoping to disable the Wanderer before it reached the relative safety of the asteroid field. Energy beams flashed past the ship as Marcus dove into the maze. Immediately, his sensors went haywire as competing gravitational fields and electromagnetic interference played havoc with the ship's systems. Navigation became a matter of instinct and quick reflexes rather than computer precision. The first few minutes were the worst. Asteroids loomed out of the sensor static like mountain-sized ghosts, forcing Marcus to make split-second course corrections. The ship's hull groaned under the stress of constant maneuvering, and several times he felt the artificial gravity fluctuate as the ship's systems struggled to compensate. Behind them, he could see flashes of light that marked the Zephyrian ship's attempts to follow. One of them clipped an asteroid within the first 10 minutes and spun out of control, its hull breached by the impact. The other two pressed on, but they were moving much more cautiously now, falling behind as Marcus pushed deeper into the maze. An hour into the journey, disaster struck. The Wanderer emerged from behind a massive asteroid to find itself on a collision course with a cluster of smaller rocks. Marcus threw the ship into an emergency turn, but the maneuver put too much stress on the already damaged hyperdrive. Warning lights flashed across his control panel as critical systems began to fail. The ship shuddered to a halt, dead in space among the asteroids. Emergency power kicked in, but the main engines were offline. Worse, the life support systems were running on backup power with maybe 6 hours of air remaining. Marcus sat in his pilot's chair, staring at the failure indicators, and let himself have one moment of despair. Then he got to work. He'd been in impossible situations before and survived through a combination of skill, luck, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. First, he checked on Lyra. She was conscious but pale, clearly in pain despite the medications. The rough flight through the asteroid field hadn't been kind to her injuries. "Engine trouble?" she asked, though the ship's stillness made the answer obvious. "Hyperdrive motivator finally gave up completely," Marcus confirmed. "I can probably fix it, but it'll take time we don't have. The Zephyrians are still out there, and our life support won't last more than a few hours on backup power." Lyra was quiet for a moment, then asked, "May I see the engine specifications?" Marcus was surprised by the request, but brought up the technical displays on a portable screen. Lyra studied them with obvious expertise, her eyes moving quickly over the complex diagrams. "I was an engineer before I became a medical officer," she explained. "Your hyperdrive design is interesting, very efficient, but you've pushed it beyond its rated capacity for years." "Had to," Marcus said. "Stock engines won't get you out of the kind of trouble I usually find myself in." Lyra nodded, then pointed to a section of the display. "This power coupling here. If we reroute energy from the secondary life support systems and temporarily bypass the safety protocols, we might be able to get enough power to restart the motivator." Marcus looked at the modification she was suggesting. It was dangerous and would leave them with even less life support, but it might work. "That's pretty risky. If it doesn't work, we'll use up our remaining power and be dead in the water, as opposed to being dead when the Zephyrians find us," Lyra asked with a weak smile. Marcus found himself grinning despite their desperate situation. "Fair point. Let's do it." Working together, they began the delicate process of rewiring the ship's power systems. Marcus handled the physical modifications, while Lyra guided him through the technical specifications from her position in the medical bay. Her knowledge of advanced engineering principles filled in gaps in his practical experience, creating solutions he never would have thought of on his own. The work took 3 precious hours, during which their life support continued to deteriorate. The air grew thin and stale, and both of them began to suffer from oxygen deprivation. Marcus's hands shook as he made the final connections, and he could hear Lyra's breathing becoming labored over the intercom. "That should do it," Lyra said finally. "Try bringing the motivator online gradually." Marcus returned to the bridge and began the startup sequence. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the hyperdrive began to hum with power. Status lights turned green one by one as the modified systems came online. "It's working," Marcus breathed, hardly daring to believe it. He engaged the engines and felt the ship surge forward through the asteroid field. The modifications Lyra had suggested didn't just fix the hyperdrive, they made it more efficient than it had ever been. They emerged from the Devil's Maze to find clear space ahead and no sign of pursuit. The Zephyrian ships had either been destroyed in the asteroids or given up the chase as too dangerous. Marcus set course for Harmony Point and restored full life support, flooding the ship with fresh, clean air. In the medical bay, he found Lyra slumped over the portable screen, exhausted by their ordeal. Her vital signs were stable, but the stress of the last few hours had taken its toll on her healing body. "You saved us," Marcus said quietly, checking her bandages and adjusting her medication levels. "We saved each other," Lyra replied, managing a tired smile. "Your flying through that asteroid field was incredible. I have never seen anything like it." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks at the compliment. "Just doing what needed to be done." "No," Lyra said seriously. "What you did was extraordinary. Most pilots would have died in the first few minutes of that maze. Your species has a reputation for taking impossible risks, but I always thought it was just recklessness. Now I see there is skill behind the madness." They spent the remaining journey to Harmony Point talking about their respective species and cultures. Marcus learned that Aquarian society was highly structured and hierarchical, with individual achievement valued less than service to the community. In return, he tried to explain human concepts of individual freedom and self-determination that seemed to fascinate Lyra. "Your people value the right to choose your own path," she mused during one conversation, "even when that choice might be harmful to the larger community." Sometimes, Marcus admitted, "we figure that free people making their own mistakes is better than perfect order imposed from above. Doesn't always work out, but it's what we believe." "It is a strange philosophy," Lyra said, "but I think I am beginning to understand its appeal." When Harmony Point finally appeared on their sensors, Marcus felt a mixture of relief and regret. Relief that they'd made it safely, but regret that their journey together was ending. Over the past few days, he'd grown to enjoy Lyra's company in a way that surprised him. Her quiet intelligence and gentle humor had made the small ship feel less lonely. Dr. Sarah Kim met them at the docking bay, her medical team standing by with a portable stretcher. Sarah was a small, energetic woman in her 50s who'd been patching up salvagers and traders for decades. She took one look at Lyra and immediately began issuing orders to her staff. Broken leg, internal trauma, severe malnutrition, she diagnosed rapidly as they transferred Lyra to the medical center. She'll need surgery, but the prognosis is good. You did excellent work with the emergency treatment, Marcus. As they wheeled Lyra toward the surgical suite, she reached out and caught Marcus's hand. "Thank you," she said simply. "For everything." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "Get better. That's all the thanks I need." As the doors closed behind her, Marcus found himself alone in the medical center's waiting area, staring at the sterile walls and wondering what came next. He'd delivered Lyra safely, fulfilled his responsibility to help her. Now he could return to his life as a solitary salvager, working the outer rim and avoiding complications. But as he sat there in the quiet waiting room, Marcus realized he didn't want to go back to that life. Something had changed during their journey together, something he couldn't quite put into words. Lyra had shown him what it felt like to have someone to care about, someone who depended on him for more than just transportation or salvage services. Dr. Kim emerged from the surgical suite several hours later, looking tired but satisfied. "The surgery went well," she reported. "Her leg will heal completely, though she'll need several weeks of recovery time. The internal injuries were minor, and the malnutrition can be corrected with proper diet and supplements." "Can I see her?" Marcus asked. Sarah nodded. "She's sleeping off the anesthesia, but you can sit with her if you want." Marcus made his way to Lyra's room, where she lay peaceful and still beneath clean white sheets. Her blue-tinted skin had lost its unhealthy pallor, and her breathing was deep and regular. For the first time since he'd found her, she looked truly at peace. He settled into the chair beside her bed and prepared to wait. Outside the medical center's windows, Harmony Point bustled with activity as ships came and went, but Marcus's attention was focused on the sleeping figure beside him. Whatever happened next, he knew his life had been permanently changed by finding her broken and forsaken in that abandoned station. As if sensing his presence, Lyra stirred slightly and murmured something in her own language. Marcus didn't understand the words, but the tone was warm and content. He smiled and settled back in his chair, keeping watch over her as she healed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and decisions, but for now, it was enough to know she was safe. 3 weeks later, Marcus sat in the observation lounge of Harmony Point's medical facility, watching Lyra work through her physical therapy exercises. Her recovery had been remarkable, much faster than Dr. Kim had initially predicted. Aquarian physiology, it turned out, was naturally resilient, especially when given proper medical care and nutrition. "She's healing beautifully," Dr. Kim said, settling into the chair beside him with a cup of coffee. "Another week, and she'll be cleared for normal activity. The question is, what happens then?" It was a question that had been weighing on Marcus's mind for days. Lyra's official status was complicated. Technically, she was a deserter from the Aquarian military, though the circumstances of her abandonment made that designation questionable. She couldn't return to her homeworld without facing a court-martial, and she had no legal standing in most systems without proper documentation. She could apply for refugee status, Sarah continued. Harmony Point sees a lot of cases like hers. Military personnel from various species who find themselves unable to return home for political or personal reasons. Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on Lyra as she practiced walking without the support crutches. She moved with natural grace despite the lingering stiffness in her injured leg, her silver hair catching the artificial sunlight streaming through the lounge's windows. Over the past weeks, their conversations had ranged far beyond their initial circumstances. Lyra had shared stories of her home world, a beautiful water planet where cities floated on vast oceans and the population lived in harmony with complex marine ecosystems. In return, Marcus had told her about Earth, about the crowded cities and wild frontiers that had shaped human civilization. You know, Sarah said quietly, she asks about you constantly. We're going to visit, whether you've left the station, what your plans are. I think she's grown quite attached to her rescuer. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. We're just friends. I helped her when she needed it. Sarah gave him a look that suggested she wasn't buying his casual dismissal. Marcus, in the 15 years I've known you, I've never seen you stay in one place for more than a few days unless your ship needed major repairs. You've been here 3 weeks, and the Wanderer was spaceworthy after the first day. Before Marcus could respond, Lyra noticed them watching and walked over, moving with only the slightest limp. Her face lit up when she saw Marcus, a smile that never failed to make his heart skip. Dr. Kim says I will be cleared for release soon, she said, settling gracefully into a nearby chair. I wanted to thank you again for arranging my treatment here. I know it was expensive. Marcus waved off her gratitude. Don't worry about it. I had a good salvage run before I found you. Besides, Dr. Kim owes me a few favors. Still, Lyra insisted, I am in your debt. My people have a saying, a life saved creates a bond that transcends species. I take such obligations seriously. Dr. Kim excused herself, claiming she had other patients to check on, but Marcus caught her knowing smile as she left. He found himself alone with Lyra, acutely aware of how beautiful she looked in the soft lighting of the lounge. What will you do when you're released? Marcus asked, though he'd been avoiding the question for days. Lyra was quiet for a moment, staring out the windows at the ships coming and going from the station's docking bays. I've been thinking about that. Dr. Kim mentioned that Harmony Point has a medical facility that serves the Outer Rim settlements. They need doctors who understand multiple species physiology. You're thinking of staying here? It would be a good life, Lyra said carefully. Meaningful work, safety, a chance to start over. She paused, then looked directly at him. But I have also been thinking about something else. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. What's that? During our journey through the asteroid field, when we were working together to repair your ship, I realized something. We make a good team, Marcus. Your practical skills and my technical knowledge, your courage and my caution. We complement each other. We do. Marcus agreed, not sure where she was leading. Lyra took a breath, as if steeling herself for what came next. I have been researching human customs and laws. I understand that your people often form partnerships for both personal and professional reasons. Business partnerships, romantic relationships, marriages. Marcus's mouth went dry. That's true. I also understand that your work as a salvager can be dangerous and lonely. Having a partner with medical and engineering skills could be valuable. Very valuable, Marcus managed. Lyra leaned forward slightly, her swirling eyes intent on his face. I am proposing a partnership, Marcus. Not just business, though that would be part of it. I have grown to care for you greatly over these weeks. More than gratitude for saving my life. Is it possible that you might feel the same? Marcus felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. In all his years of solitary wandering, he'd never imagined that someone like Lyra might want to share his life. Lyra asks, I do feel the same, but my life isn't easy. The work is dangerous, and I'm always moving from place to place. You be giving up security and stability. I will be choosing freedom, Lyra said firmly. The freedom to decide my own path, to care for someone who cares for me, to build something meaningful with my life. Is that not what you told me was the most important human value? Marcus couldn't help but laugh at having his own words used against him. You have been paying attention. I'm a quick learner, Lyra said with a smile. So what do you say? Will you take on a partner? Before Marcus could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed as the station's automated systems announced an incoming distress call. Marcus and Lyra hurried to the nearest information terminal to see what was happening. The main screen showed a ship's identification beacon, broadcasting a standard distress signal. But this wasn't just any ship. The registry codes identified it as an Aquarian military vessel, the same unit that had abandoned Lyra on the mining station. "That's the Tide Runner," Lyra breathed, her face going pale. "My former ship." Marcus studied the incoming data. The ship was badly damaged, with multiple hull breaches and failing life support. According to the distress message, they'd been attacked by the same Zephyrian raiders who had pursued the Wanderer. Only this time the raiders have been better prepared. 13 crew members aboard. Marcus read from the display. "Life support failing, engines offline. They need immediate evacuation." Lyra stared at the screen with a mixture of emotions playing across her face. These were the people who had abandoned her to die, who had prioritized their mission over her life. Now they were the ones in desperate need of rescue. "The station's rescue ships are all out on other calls," Marcus noted, checking the operational status. "It would be hours before they could respond." "My ship could reach them in 30 minutes, Marcus said quietly. "The Wanderer has enough space for 13 passengers, and the medical bay could handle any injuries." Lyra looked at him sharply. "You would rescue them? After what they did to me?" Marcus met her eyes steadily. "It's the right thing to do. People are in danger, and we can help them. Their past actions don't change that." For a long moment, Lyra said nothing. Then, slowly she nodded. "You are right. Despite everything, they're still my people. We should help them." 20 minutes later, the Wanderer was racing through space toward the coordinates of the damaged Aquarian ship. Lyra had insisted on coming along despite Dr. Kim's protests about her recent surgery. She'd pointed out that having an Aquarian medical officer aboard might be crucial if there were serious injuries. The Tide Runner was worse off than the distress message had indicated. The sleek Aquarian vessel was venting atmosphere from multiple holes blasted in its hull, and its beautiful bioluminescent hull markings had gone dark. Emergency lights flickered weakly through the viewports. "This is Salvage Vessel Wanderer responding to your distress call," Marcus broadcast on standard emergency frequencies. "We're prepared to take on survivors." The response came immediately, weak but clear. "This is Commander Thale of the Tide Runner. We have injured crew and failing life support. Can you dock with our emergency airlock?" Marcus studied the damaged ship's configuration. "Negative.